We're gonna open the meeting. Hopefully we'll get through this quickly so everyone can get home before all this snow comes. First item on the agenda is the appointments for the planning board. Make a resolution that the planning board appoint Mr. Al Yeager, CHA, as the planning board engineer. And we appoint Harrison Beach,
Well, let's do
PLLC.
individual resolutions if you don't mind.
Pardon?
Individual resolutions.
Oh, individual, okay. Trying to be more efficient, but I'm not.
He's one.
All right,
I'll second the first one.
all right. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, so moved.
Thank you.
Second is the appointment of Harrison Beach, PLLC, attorney at law for the planning board attorney.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, so moved. And finally, but not last, appointment of Mr. Douglas Beechel as deputy chairman.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, so moved. Thank you. We have no public hearings. Did everyone get a chance to look at the opus that Karen sent us on our December 12th, 24 minutes?
Yes.
I'm not aware, were there any changes, material changes to it?
I didn't have any.
I didn't. Okay, I make a motion that we accept the December 12 planning board minutes as submitted by the secretary.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, so moved.
I do have one question. On some occasions, we've had to get someone to fill in for Al when there's a potential, does that need to be an appointment or is that?
No,
just-
we have a contract.
Yeah, we have an IMA existing with the town.
Okay.
Contract.
Okay,
Yep.
all right, thank you.
Okay, first order of business is the site plan review for Premex properties on Belgium Road.
So the plans are there in front of you. The applicant did not drive in from Massachusetts today. They have addressed all of the comments that county planning and I had in the review process.
Some of it is.
At this point in time, unless the board has additional questions, I think we would be in a position to approve the controlled site review for this project.
Any further questions?
Well, I'd like to take a look at it because I couldn't open it.
Go ahead.
I don't know why, I couldn't open the file.
There's a password, it was password protected, so you had to
Yes.
copy and paste the password in.
Well, I got to that point, I'm sorry, I guess I didn't understand that we had the password. I saw that and it ended there for me, but I just want to quick look.
So the big changes really were the addition of the crosswalks for pedestrians.
Yeah, and we had talked about that, so.
This is just additions.
This is what I had for the last time.
Yep.
Something.
This is an old drawing set.
Are we acting on it tonight?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the only set I have, and then did the PDF. Yeah. Do you have a 113 revision date on that?
This has the 131 revision date, so I'm gonna pull them up, I'll pull it up on the screen here. Casey, would you mind sharing your screen with the site plan pulled up?
Just a sec. Sorry, I had a hard copy in front of me, but I can pull it up.
Thank you.
Can everybody see it?
Yes, we could just look to the site plan.
Scroll down to the site plan.
Yep. So the big changes are the addition of the pedestrian crosswalks.
Yeah, so if you don't mind, I can
By
walk
all
through
means,
those.
Casey, go ahead.
Yeah, so for the major changes, the building, the layout of the parking is pretty much the same. What we did provide and what was discussed at the last meeting was more striping along the back of the mobile and an area for potential loading for the mobile to kind of separate the actual access drive and the loading, and then some safety measures to walk across to the mobile. And we also provided that along this corridor here with a curb cut in the middle so pedestrians could walk to the mobile from the proposed retail as well. Other than that, we had some minor modifications to the detention basin, but relatively the same area of the detention. It remained, but we modified it to a different stormwater measure. And that's pretty much it.
There's also a slight variation in the limits of clearing, and some of the trees on the west side of the parcel were saved to act as a vegetative buffer between the Dollar General and the veterinary hospital.
Correct, yeah, we regraded that and saved a strip here, yeah.
Thank you, Casey.
Al, are you good with all the answers they gave us on the 31st of January?
I am, yes.
We are still awaiting DOT, New York State DOT.
We have not gotten a formal letter from the DOT yet on the traffic impact assessment that they did for the project. I don't anticipate any problems. I gave it a thorough review. I had one minor comment on Saturday peak hour that they addressed. And at this point in time, I don't see any, I don't anticipate that DOT is gonna have any issues.
Should we still condition it?
It is a condition.
Yeah, I recommended that we condition that.
You're right. I'll read into the record the letter we received from our engineer. Dear Chairman Corey and Lysander Planning Board members, I have completed my review of the site plan drawings and SWEP with a final revision date of February 13, 2025, as prepared by Solely Engineering, LLC, for the above referenced project. At this time, the site plan drawings and SWEP appear to be in compliance with all local and state requirements. I would recommend the planning board include the following conditions on the approval of the control site review for the project. 1, correspondence from the New York State DOT indicating they have reviewed the traffic impact analysis for the project and find it acceptable. 2, correspondence from Empire State Development Corp. Indicating that the site meets the requirements of the Radisson Corporate Park Land Use Control. Findings. Review of the short environmental assessment form indicates that there will be no significant or adverse impacts resulting from this. There are 2 letters on file prepared by Al Yeager, Town Engineer, dated January 23rd, 2025 and February 13th, 2025, that have been made part of the public record. There's a letter on file prepared by Empire State Development Court dated December 18, 2025, approving the use of the site, but not the site plan, which should be made a condition of any approval. This application was forwarded to the Onondaga County Planning Board for their review and recommendation, who made the following recommendations. Now therefore be it resolved that the Onondaga County Planning Board recommends the following modifications to the proposed action prior to local board approval. The applicant is required to coordinate with New York State Route 31 access plans with the New York State Department of Transportation. The municipality must ensure any mitigation as may be determined by the department is reflected on the project plans prior to or as a condition of municipal approval. The applicant must show any stormwater accommodations on the plans prior to or as a condition of municipal approval. The applicant must contact U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and/or New York State Department of Environmental Conservation to confirm the presence of federal and/or state wetlands and/or the 100-foot state wetland buffer on the site. All confirmed wetlands should be shown on the plans for the site, and any necessary permits should be obtained for any proposed development or placement of fill in a wetland or drainage or any confirmed wetlands and buffers prior to or as a condition of approval. The applicant must show the entirety of the parcel on the plans for the site. The board offers the following comment. Given the rear lands of the site are landlocked and potentially limited by wetlands to the east, the board encourages the applicant and the town plan for future access to the rear lands to show on an improved plan. The applicant municipality are encouraged to improve the site design by placing the building along New York State 31 road frontage and moving the front parking lot to the rear of the store. Additionally, the town is encouraged to require landscaping along the front footage and around parking lots. This action is consistent with the town's comprehensive land use plan and is consistent with the town's current zoning ordinances.
Skip that next one.
Skip
the next bullet.
Okay.
I'll go to the last, this action will cause.
This action will cause no adverse effects on the public health, safety, and welfare in the neighborhood or district. Make the following motion. Resolve that having reviewed the site plan as defined on a map dated February 13th, 2025, prepared by Solely Engineering LLC, associated with the application for property located at 2998 Belgium Road, Baldwinsville, New York, and part of the Radisson PUD, to allow the construction of a proposed commercial development, Dollar General. The site plan is approved with the following conditions. 1, review and approval of Empire State Development Corporation. 2, any outstanding expert fees. And 3, those recommended conditions that are contained within the engineer's letter, which was read into the public record and is dated February 13th.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I don't know that I understand that, the rear access comment from the county.
Previously, the board was, the building was, that was an old site plan that they were sent for review. There's obviously, the right-in entrance off of 31 would, if you needed to go continue south onto the adjacent parcel, you would be able to, there's no parking in the way, they could simply extend the road and have access to the back of that parcel.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved.
Pass that right over to Karen.
Pass them all over.
Don't need that anymore.
Our next item on the agenda, the control site use update, Lysander, RIC Energy.
Thank you for having us. I shared these last week, but there are a few updates, so I figured I'd print it out to your collection here. My name is Alex Mirabili. I represent the project. I'm a developer for Radial Power, and we're the developer for Lysander 3 PV LLC, also known as the applicant. I'm joined today by Nate Kemmerer, our director of construction, and Matthew Laponis, our legal consultant. Today we're seeking approval for the latest site plan that was recently approved by National Grid. A PDF of the site plan can be found in attachment D, that was also shared last week. Although it took some time and creativity with the utility, we finally received approval from National Grid for the same plan that matches the configuration that was agreed upon in the May 2024 planning board meeting. That resolution is also attached. We hope that this is accepted by the planning board and sufficient for permit issuance. We're happy to answer any questions you might have tonight. I know there was a bit of history with this applicant, and I don't want to dwell on that if you're all familiar with it, but if anybody has questions or wants me to provide context, I'm happy to go into that as well. I think I laid some of that history out in my original email last week. I also have a new document that was just shared with me 2 days ago by the landowner, and is a letter of support for the pole-mounted site plan that we're presenting tonight. So I would just like to quickly read that, and I can share a copy with you, Mr. Chairman. I have one printed.
We already have received it.
Okay.
And have it, yeah.
Okay, very good. Did everyone here have a chance to read it?
Yep.
Okay, so I can spare that as well. So at this point, I'll open it up to questions, and we can get into specifics if you'd like.
Refresh my memory, this is one that we've seen before.
So we've seen it before, they came back with a ground-mounted option in, was it November, Karen?
Yeah, it was,
November.
I can get you the exact.
November
13th.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it was middle of November sometime, we approved, obviously, because it mitigated the number of, I think that only included adding one new pole, as I recall.
Two new poles.
Two new poles.
Yeah.
This is the plan that was approved, matches the plan that was approved May 9th by the planning board of 2024. The planning board directed me to get them to install as few poles as possible, just for the visual aesthetics for the houses that are across the street from this, directly across the street from this, which already have several poles in front of them already. The board was in, or at least the chairman and I were in favor of the ground-mounted plan that was provided. And we, gave them the green light that they could, if they came in with that plan, they could pull their building permit. At this point in time, a building permit has not been issued. I think they made application and pulled the application and.
So after the ground mount plan was submitted, which I'll comment on it in just a moment, a building permit was issued.
Yep.
We assumed it was for that plan. It didn't show the site plan in that permit, but it was issued by you right after that.
Okay.
So, but back to what I was gonna say about the ground mount plan being submitted. That was actually submitted without the applicant and the utilities knowledge and approval. More importantly, National Grid did not approve that site plan yet. It was submitted prematurely. I think the construction team was a little anxious to get to the site and mobilize, which they typically are. It was discussed, but we were simultaneously pursuing the other option in case it did work, because of course, as you can imagine, we would much prefer, as well as the property owner would prefer, to have the original site plan that was approved in the May 9th resolution as our end goal plan. However, it took a while to get that through to National Grid because Nate can describe a little bit more in detail what we did differently and why it's unique. There's actually less equipment on the site plan now than the one that was approved in the May 9th resolution. The customer closer has been replaced by fuses. So that's a big piece of equipment that was eliminated and is now smaller. And the metering equipment that would typically be on the poles is no longer on the poles. And that would be one of the reasons why we were able to get just 4 poles instead of 5 or 6. So just like the resolution says in the May 9th planning board meeting, we have tried to the best of our ability to meet the site condition, and that accepted the site plan, as you can see in attachment A, and we did our very best to match that site plan in our latest approval, and appreciate your consideration.
So we had talked about having ground mounted equipment, and now we're going to pole.
It was poles to, and then back to ground mount for a brief period, and then back to poles, but only because it was approved in the May 9th resolution. The pole mounted site plan was approved by the planning board already.
Hi folks, I'm
So
Matt.
what was why were we pursuing the ground mounted equipment? What drove that?
Yeah, so I'm not,
Your resolution in the May 9th,
Requested.
yes, they work with my office
They
to
pursue
minimize
that.
the number of poles that were required.
Yeah.
right, but it does say in that resolution, to the best of our ability, and it accepted the pole mounted site plan.
I guess the question would be, what ability have you put forth in order to reduce poles and go with ground mounted equipment?
Sure.
Part of it also had to do with the farmland impacts. So that property right there it's farmland, right? So if you throw ground mounted in there, then the amount of farmland that you have gets reduced, and then after decommissioning of the facility, you have a whole lot more work that needs to take place to be able to remove those pads and everything. If you have the poles, then you're not looking at reduction of farmland. You're not looking at the amount of work that you have to do to remove those pads, those ground mounted pads. So that was part of the impetus for putting in the poles in the first place. The visual impacts, there's not, I mean, if you look at that intersection, I'm sure we have some photos or something, but there are already poles there. The amount, I think it's, what are we looking at, 4?
Yeah, there's 4 that are existing.
Yep.
4 that are 8 poles within a stretch of about 100 feet.
Right, so, for the purposes of the landowner, making sure that the farmland is protected, we think it makes sense to put in the poles rather than putting in the ground-mounted situation. The ground-mounted stuff was submitted really by mistake. I mean, they were working, just to see if it might be feasible, but really the poles are the best option, especially when we're looking at protection of farmland. So that's why we're here tonight. So
How much farmland is lost if you?
We're talking a few thousand square feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just gonna say, I don't think we're.
It's not even
Right.
close to a quarter of an acre.
And you mean, and to tell me you're going to farm this land where these pads would be?
well, we're required as solar developers to decommission and then restore it afterwards,
I
right?
understand that.
To the original,
But you
to
were
the original
presenting that
condition.
this would save agricultural land during the life of the.
Well, during the life of the project, right, like it's not gonna be farmed, right?
So this
But-
area where these units would be, well, it's not gonna be farmed now, and it wouldn't be farmed if you put the units there.
If with a larger footprint at the interconnection part of the plan, it would have like Al said here, a couple thousand square feet but it would have an impact to what they're able to farm, because this isn't within the fence in the system. It is out by the the road where the interconnection is gonna be. So in between that is the farmable land. And I spoke with the landowner on Monday just to find out more about what they're farming. Is this a legitimate argument? Because they raised this condition to us and we weren't aware of it. And they farm for soy and corn. They alternate between the two. So it is something that they are passionate about. In addition to that, you mentioned how we have reduced the number of poles. So the other developer, this site plan that was approved on May 9th is the reduced pole site plan. Now, it was not approved by the utility yet. That's why it took so long. Each site plan we went through the utility on had slightly more poles. It went from 6 to 5, now down to finally 4. As Al, you recall, we shared a site plan with you which had one too many poles. He pointed out that this does not match the site plan that was approved on the May 9th resolution. And Nate here was actually the one to work with National Grid to come up with a way to reduce one more pole so that the equipment did not require, essentially the difference between a recloser and some metering equipment, which will no longer be there. The other thing we'd like to point out is we understand the aesthetic concerns, but having seen the site, and if you're all familiar with the area, the community and the neighborhood will most likely be accustomed to just 2 more, we're talking about just 2 more utility poles here than the ground-mounted plan, because the ground-mounted plan still requires 2 utility poles. This plan would require 4. However, 2 new poles with no ground-mounted equipment would be, in my opinion, much more aesthetically pleasing than a large 10 by 10 by 10 pad-mounted switchgear and transformer, in addition to 2 new poles. People would notice the ground-mounted equipment. I can almost certainly say that, and we will do our best to screen it. But having worked at these sites before, it's really difficult to fully do that. And of course, in the adjacent properties, there's a potential we'll see it too.
The last page of the handout that you just received has some pictures of the ground mounted.
Yeah, those are some example photos of.
As I was gonna say, the 1,000 square feet,
It's mostly.
you're not taking up 1,000 square.
Well, no, it's actually more because it has to go on the other side of the access road, and the pole lineup is within the existing utility pole lineup. So it's not actually going on their land. It's in the utility right away, which is another benefit of the pole lineup.
So I think we
Kind of talked it to death.
certainly tried to reduce the number of poles that these projects have. We've seen that, I think we've heard from the public that that's generally one of the aesthetic issues that people dislike. I mean,
Of course.
Yeah, you're right, of course. It's,
Yeah.
and I think when you keep saying that it was approved, I think it was approved contingent upon this effort and to reduce the poles. You reduced it by 1. And not sure I'm buying all the agricultural stuff as to why you can't do it. I assume there's an
Yeah,
economic cost to
Sure.
it as well.
out of respect for the property, we wanted to raise that on their behalf. Yep.
Probably should sell it that way in the sense that that's how we would understand it, because, but it sounds as if you made the effort. I mean,
Yeah, I think the last part of your presentation was probably the most effective. Looking at the ground mounted pads, where they would be within the property line versus these additional poles, which I don't know how many it is at this point, but that's okay. It's probably less than an eyesore.
Yeah.
Than the ground mounted pads. I think I've changed my tune, personally.
You? Do you have any comment?
Nope.
and I would agree with that as well, that the location of these, I suppose there's difficulty with locating them back where the array is.
Certainly.
For line loss or something, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't even know if National Grid would approve that.
I asked this question though, how come when you look up on these poles, you see some equipment, but you don't see nearly this much equipment. I mean, how come there's so much more hardware for ground mounted than pole mount?
So a lot of the equipment for the ground mount stuff is back ground mounted inside the array. And then National Grid, usually there's 5 bays in that. National Grid owns 2 of them. But what you can't see in there is there's another 10-foot by 10-foot concrete pad where it's like a manhole where National Grid has to pull all their wires into.
But I'm saying this replaces what's on your poles, right? But it
Yeah,
just seems
so-
like these 2 features that we're looking at, these 2 units, whatever they are, they just seem to be physically much larger than what I see up on the poles.
Right, a lot
Substantial.
of that is the housing, and because it's protected. On the poles, if you picture everything that's in there, it's dispersed throughout 4 poles. So it's tough to visualize now, but
Okay.
it's mostly due to the fact that it's on a 10 by 10 concrete pad and then housed by a large green metal box.
All right.
Well, I would say after this discussion, it's a sense of the board that they're willing to accept this new proposal with the 4 poles versus the one we had made with 9.
Yeah, I think it was actually November, they came back with one that had 6, I believe is what it was.
Yes.
Yeah, and I was like, this is more than what was agreed to even in May, we're going the wrong way.
We didn't count the existing pole in that lineup, and it's counted in this plan, which is why, so, yeah.
I just have one more question. Why did someone come forward and meet with us, or at least Mr. Yeager and myself, and propose a ground-mounted solution? You're suggesting they had no authority to do that, or shouldn't have been there.
They weren't the one to propose the solution, they were the one to send the plan and essentially say, would this pass as site plan approval? You're correct on the point where they did not have the authority to do that yet. It was well intended, and as the developer, the primary developer, I personally apologize on their behalf. And you can assure us that there won't be any more miscommunications with our contractors again.
When a planning board has an objective, not well to suggest to them you can meet that suggestion and then have to come back.
Couldn't agree more.
This resolution we have here, Karen.
It includes the applicant's letter.
Yes.
You don't want to read that into the record?
Well, I'll be glad to read it in. I mean, basically, what he's talking about is saying he has no problem and prefers pole to ground mounted, but I'll read it in. All right. Okay. Per the planning board's controlled site use resolution of May 9, 2024, in part, the applicant shall work with National Grid and the engineer for the town to reduce the number of telephone poles for the interconnect site to 1, and the rest of the line shall be ground mounted and screened or underground to the extent National Grid allows. In the event National Grid requires more than 1 pole, all poles shall be screened and approved to the satisfaction of the engineer for the town. There is a letter on file prepared by the owner of the property dated February 11, 2025 that will be made part of the public record, in part. I would like to express my support for the site plan being proposed that features the pole-mounted equipment configuration that is in line with the current utility poles on Dingle Hole Road. I do not support a site plan that utilizes ground-mounted equipment for a variety of reasons. 1, a pole-mounted equipment configuration requires less physical space compared to ground-mounted equipment. Not only would the ground-mounted equipment need to be placed on a large concrete pad, but the utility would also need to install multiple underground manholes adjacent to the equipment. In addition, I believe the ground-mounted equipment would be less aesthetically pleasing than pole-mounted. The proposed pole mounted equipment plan includes blah, 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 blah. Okay. There is an email correspondence on file dated January 21, 2025 from Byron Venus National Grid indicated National Grid has approved the proposed layout for the final design. Did you ever take to National Grid a ground-mounted site plan to see if they would approve it?
We took the concept to them, but not a final plan.
And their response was?
It would have to, essentially, they only respond until they have a final plan, but they said the approval process would take much longer. The engineering process also takes longer on our part too. So we wanted to first pursue every avenue with this existing plan before going through that.
Okay, so basically, see, the planning board, you guys disagree with me if you want. The planning board really doesn't exist to accommodate an applicant's concern about what something might cost, how long it might take to get. We're here to deal with the codes of the town and the elements that affect our residents. So it's a little frustrating to me what went on here. But it's obvious that the rest of the board is okay with it.
No, don't.
Well, we'll find out when we vote. won't we?
Yeah, but I agree that the objective has been established by, I think, this board, and it's been, that we're trying to reduce these number of poles. We just, unfortunately, they're unsightly. The public has expressed that they are. People have expressed that they're okay with solar, but they certainly don't like the poles. So we're trying to do everything we can. Mm-hmm. The resolution, in a way, asked you to do that. And I guess your objective now is to convince us that you have done everything that you can. Now, it sounds like you sent something to National Grid that was, I don't know, more than a sketch on the back of an envelope, but it sounds like it was a quite conceptual idea. It didn't sound as if they said no to it. Now, the response was that it would take longer. And as Jack said, longer doesn't mean anything to us. We're not, that's not a concern for us.
Totally understand. One of the things that it might do is actually kill the project. And before we initiate an engineering set of that scope, we have to do a feasibility study to make sure that the project will still be able to economically handle the additional costs and the additional time required of the project.
Well, we're not here to kill your project, but at the same time, we're not here to accommodate things that are contradictory to our objectives.
Sure. Completely understand.
And I guess, so, you know, I'm sorry, but I'll buy this agricultural thing that much. It's not that.
That's
big.
okay. Again, we raised it on behalf of the landowner.
You know, I mean,
yeah.
Someone's pushing it, but I'm not there. You'd have to say more to convince me of that. But aesthetically, I think you're right. This thing up at the road is unsightly. The poles are unsightly. Now we pick which one we think is less of an impact on our community for a visual impact. But is the potential of moving that back to the array available? I mean, what would say that it can't be back away from the road and where the array is? Are there technical, roadblocks to that?
Yeah, there are, and it's all safety related. It's utility, National Grid specific requirement that basically needs for them to have the shut-off switch, aka a valuable piece of equipment that's ground mounted or pole mounted within quick access of their utility crews. So if it's embedded in the center of the project, that would be a no-go for them.
Yeah, you have to hook up to them. They're not coming to you.
Exactly, and that's a safety matter.
Right.
I guess the only comment I would have, a lot of what you read there talked about screening. And are we going to be happy with whatever screening is going to be done?
You can't screen these poles.
Oh, no.
I know you can't really
Can't
screen the
screen
poles, so you
Yeah,
can't.
you can't screen poles, and I would rather see the poles in line with the personally, this is a personal opinion, I'd rather see the poles in line with the existing utility poles rather than in the middle of the field.
Now that,
I would agree with that.
I mean,
And you're certainly not gonna, there's not enough room there to plant shrubs or trees between the poles and the side of the road, that's a hazard anyway. There's no screening these, I can't see of a way to reduce the visual impact with screening in this instance.
not for,
I'm,
what, 25 foot, whatever they are.
Yeah.
Poles. I mean, ground mounted you can screen, but poles you can't screen. All right. Resolved that in reviewing the electrical site plan prepared by Craig Collifer, close enough. AMS Renewable Energy and Radio Power dated October 28, 2024, last revised January 17, 2025. Associated with interconnect layout sketch option 3 dated May 6, 2024, prepared by Wendell Companies on behalf of Lysander 3 PD LLC for property located at 1743 Lansing Road, Phoenix, New York, and per the request of the planning board that the applicant work with National Grid to come up with an acceptable site plan to minimize the number of poles. The planning board approves the revised site plan, this one here, the one you just showed us, with the following conditions, if any.
Can you just verify the dates of those site plans? They didn't change, did they?
No, ma'am.
it's in here.
Yeah, the one that's being approved is the one that's dated 5/6/2024. May 6, 2024.
Want me to leave the electrical site plan out of
No,
it?
hang on, we got a revision date and attachment D.
Yeah, so attachment D is the one we're presenting today. Attachment A is the one that was presented.
Okay, so attachment D, the final revision date is,
Sorry about that.
it's one, is that January 17th? I can't
Yeah.
read it.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
You got
January
magnifying
17th.
glass.
Yeah, I can't.
All right, so we're approving the January 1,
January 17th, 2025
okay.
as a final revision date.
And that's the interconnect layout sketch?
Correct. Electrical site plan is titled.
Yeah, the interconnect plan is just a zoom in on the interconnection portion of the site.
So what I put there is right, the electrical site plan prepared by Craig, dated October 28, revised January 17.
Correct.
Okay, that's in the resolution, Jeff, right into the record.
That's the one. And that's the one that's pictured in here.
Yep.
Al, I can't think of any conditions.
No, it does not.
The one thing that is there a chance that any of these poles replace any existing poles?
No.
Because one of the things I really don't like, and we have a lot of it throughout our community, is double poles. There's a pole there, it's
There's
been
one on the
replaced by
corner.
a pole.
Yeah.
And now we have two poles right next to each other, and one of them is sitting there, it's cut off at the top, but it's an existing pole.
Yeah.
And we have very little authority to tell them to remove that pole, unfortunately. But if this is going to replace a pole, I would like the pole that it's replacing to be removed.
It's not replacing, but we're doing quite literally to the best of our ability to utilize the existing pole that's there.
But there won't be an empty pole there.
Right. No,
Okay.
no. And what's currently there with equipment is for other purposes and cannot be changed now.
If there is an empty pole, it's not yours anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
National Grid.
Right. We were actually happy that they were able to allow us to put equipment on their existing pole as it is.
Okay, there are no conditions. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
The last item on
must be
our
Patrick.
agenda is for information only regarding the lot line adjustment. But
I have nothing other than what I sent you guys, so.
okay.
Hi. So we own some, so my name's Asher Bitts. We own obviously the Plainville Turkey Farm. A lot of the land that's still there. It's been leased out to CMY Crops, Josh Allen, for years, probably about 20 years. He also leases a few barns from us. A lot of those barns have some serious maintenance that's required on them. And since he's using them, we would like to sell the barns to him. And in turn, we need to subdivide 3 barns off of our existing properties. And I believe there's a frontage requirement is it 200 or 250 feet? 200. We would like to retain the land itself because we still lease and farm that, but we would like to just sell the parcels off. So I don't know, I'm asking for a variance, or I'm really just looking for guidance at this point to come back to you guys with a formal proposal.
So the tax
I
rate's
apologize,
there.
Asher, I owed you something, and I did not need to completely, I dropped the ball on that, so.
No, that's fine.
Do you have the map that Doug provided? No, that's okay, we can work with this.
We were just going to do a division of land where he conveys just the barn and a portion, so that he didn't have to give up the 200 foot of lot width.
And I think I found a solution, or I have an idea for a solution. Do you mind if I walk right in this, Karen?
No.
So Josh owns these barns, correct?
So Dean Cummins owns these.
Okay, but Josh owns these
He
ones.
He owns this field.
This one, so
Yeah.
we could take a 20-foot strip of this field
Okay.
so that those parcels connect. And then you could make this part of Josh's field here.
Okay.
And
On a
this,
division of land though, right? Not a subdivision.
yes, so I think we could do that as a division of land. And then this barn, you could do an access, because Josh owns this field here, right?
What's the distinction between a division of land?
Yeah.
It's a little ways away, but yeah.
He owns to the, yes, so you could do it, yes, you could do the same thing and strip down the edge of this parcel.
If we own this and we own this.
It's okay. Doesn't matter, because you still have to meet the frontage requirements. You just chop it out the middle to give it to Josh.
Just gives him.
I think that's the simplest way to do it, and I think you can do it with lot line adjustment through a division land process, so you wouldn't have to worry about lot lines.
Lot line adjustment.
Just deeds and,
That's administrative.
That sounds.
yeah, I believe we can do it administratively, so I mean, it's awkward lots,
But you're preserving the farmland.
but you're preserving the farmland, so.
What's the zoning out there?
And
You're allowed to have non-conforming lots in ag, so.
Well, then they're ag purposes too, so. This, parcel, is owned by CMY Crops. You can simply do a 20-foot strip here and take the land around the barn and combine it with the field space. And the same thing here, this parcel is, Josh Allen and CMY Crops owns this land back here, so the same thing, you could do a 20-foot strip down and keep that there, and then they would still have their frontage required for the agricultural land.
so there's 3 parcels, right?
Okay, so there really be,
And then this parcel here is fine, it meets the requirements. Anyway, they can subdivide it and sell it as
So we would
is.
do one that's subdivided.
well, then,
Okay.
there's nothing to the planning board.
No, and I apologize, I meant to get back to that, Asher, and I
Okay.
so.
Do you have a plan from Doug?
Yeah,
So any of the lot lines being moved right now are on the property owned by Bitts LLC?
correct. Correct, yeah. And it would be conveyed to the adjacent property owner, which is CMY Crops.
So no subdivision, it would
No
just be
subdivision.
administrative.
Well, just the one that's here, this one would still be a subdivision.
Which one?
The one that fronts
On Plainville Road?
Tater Road, that one would still be a subdivision.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But these two
And then they'd have to
could be
come here.
So going for
joined.
that one.
Yeah.
So this
Join
is
us.
5.3.
Yep.
Take care of it.
Awesome.
Sorry, with our attorney and.
Thank you, Asher.
Yeah, no problem. No, I appreciate it.
Do you mind if I get that
Can I
back
make
in?
copies for myself?
Sure.
Let me see what everybody.
Do you want to see them?
I'll scan it too.
Yeah, that works. Okay. Thanks. Sorry about that.
No, you're good. Thank you,
Drop the
guys.
ball then.
That concludes our agenda for tonight. I'll take a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you for everything.